Picture this. You've just returned from a grueling business trip, exhausted but proud after landing a game-changing contract for your company. You walk into the lobby expecting congratulations, only to find your entire office packed into garbage bags, displayed like trash in front of your colleagues. Here's the thing, this wasn't about downsizing or budget cuts. This was personal. And they just picked the wrong person to humiliate. My name is Claire Whitford, and until 3 minutes ago, I thought I'd had a pretty good week. The automatic doors of Barton & Vale Consulting's glass tower whispered open, welcoming me back from Buenos Aires with a blast of over-conditioned air. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing my exhaustion after the 14-hour flight. But exhaustion felt good when you'd just secured a 7-figure contract that would make your quarterly numbers sing. Then I saw them. 3 black garbage bags slouched against the reception desk like drunk party guests who'd overstayed their welcome. My small succulent poked out from one bag's opening, soil scattered across my framed industry award that lay half-buried beneath it. My ergonomic mouse dangled from another bag's edge, its cord wrapped around what looked like my coffee mug collection. What the hell? The words escaped before I could stop them. The lobby wasn't empty. Of course it wasn't. A cluster of junior analysts huddled near the elevators, their eyes ping-ponging between their phones and the spectacle. Brad from accounting stood frozen mid-conversation with someone from HR, his mouth slightly open. Even the security guard, Marcus, who usually greeted me with a warm smile, avoided my gaze. "Ah, Claire, you're back." Marion Leclerc descended from the mezzanine level, her Louboutin heels announcing her arrival like a countdown timer. My direct supervisor wore her signature crimson blazer, the one she called her power suit, and a smile that could freeze hell over. At 48, Marion had perfected the art of corporate assassination while maintaining perfectly manicured nails. "Marion, what is this?" I gestured at the bags, fighting to keep my voice level. "Restructuring," she said, as if that single word explained everything. "The Buenos Aires trip was your last assignment with us. Consider it a parting gift that we let you finish it." "Restructuring?" I repeated, the word tasting like battery acid. "I just signed Hector Salgado. That contract alone will be properly managed by your replacement." Marion checked her watch with theatrical precision. "You have 15 minutes to collect your belongings and leave the premises. Security will escort you out if necessary." The lobby seemed to tilt. 4 years. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, of letting Marion take credit for my strategies, of building relationships that kept this firm's biggest clients from jumping ship. And this was my reward. My professional life stuffed into contractor bags like last week's garbage. "Is this even legal?" I asked. "Where's the documentation? The severance discussion? HR protocol?" Marion's smile widened. "Everything you need to know is in the envelope tucked into your bags. Though I'd be careful digging for it, I think your lunch container leaked." Sure enough, I could see an oil stain spreading across some papers in the nearest bag. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. "This is about Naples, isn't it?" I said quietly, referring to the pitch where I'd corrected her data in front of the client. "Or is it about David?" Her eye twitched, barely perceptible. But I caught it. David, her nephew, fresh out of his MBA program, who'd been shadowing me for the past month. The pieces clicked into place like a combination lock. 15 minutes, Claire." Marion turned on her heel. "Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." I looked around the lobby. Some colleagues had the decency to look uncomfortable. Others seemed to be enjoying the show, probably already composing texts about the drama. Sarah from my team had tears in her eyes, but she didn't move from her spot by the elevator. I didn't blame her. Marion had a long memory and a vindictive streak wider than the Hudson. I knelt down, ignoring how my pencil skirt protested, and carefully lifted my succulent from the bag. Soil crumbled onto the pristine marble. "Good. Let them clean it up." "You know what, Marion?" I stood, cradling the small plant like a baby. "You're right. 15 minutes is more than enough." I pulled out my phone and started recording, making sure to capture the bags, the scattered crowd, Marian's retreating figure. Evidence. Mom always taught me to document everything. For the record, I announced to the lobby, my voice carrying clear and strong. I'm being terminated without cause, immediately after securing the largest contract in Q3. My personal items have been contaminated and destroyed, and I'm being given 15 minutes to vacate without proper documentation or due process. Marian stopped mid-stride but didn't turn around. 14 minutes now, she called over her shoulder. I grabbed the garbage bags, not caring that something sticky, probably my leaked lunch, was seeping through the bottom of one. Each bag weighed more than it should have. 4 years of my life condensed into 30 pounds of contaminated memories. As I dragged them toward the exit, Marcus finally met my eyes. He mouthed 2 words. Inside job. I nodded, understanding. This wasn't restructuring. This was a hit, calculated and personal, and they'd just made the biggest mistake of their corporate lives. The parking garage smelled like motor oil and defeat. I sat in my Accord garbage bags piled in the back seat like evidence at a crime scene, and let myself process what had just happened. But instead of tears, I found myself thinking about Mom. Catherine Whitford had raised me alone in Harbor Grace, a small port town in Newfoundland where everyone knew everyone's business and the Atlantic wind could strip paint off houses. She'd worked double shifts at the regional hospital, her hands always smelling faintly of antiseptic and hope. When I was 12, she'd come home to find me crying because Jennifer Morrison had told the entire 7th grade that we lived in a rental. Listen to me, Claire, she'd said, still in her scrubs, exhausted but fierce. Don't you ever let anyone else decide your worth, not Jennifer Morrison, not some boy, not some boss. You decide. Always remember that. I'd carried those words to McGill University, then to Wharton for my MBA, and finally to New York. They'd been my armor through every condescending comment, every glass ceiling, every time someone assumed I was the assistant rather than the strategist. At Barton and Vale, I'd made compromises. When Marian presented my Asia-Pacific expansion model to the board as her own work, I'd stayed quiet. When she'd taken credit for salvaging the Hendricks account after I'd spent 3 nights rewriting the entire proposal, I'd smiled and applauded with everyone else. I'd told myself it was strategic patience, building capital, playing the long game. 2 weeks ago, that game had revealed its true rules. I'd been working late, reviewing contracts for the Buenos Aires trip, when I'd heard voices from Marian's office. The door was slightly ajar, unusual for her. David's ready, Marian was saying. He's been shadowing Whitford for a month. He knows her contacts, her methods. But Claire's numbers are exceptional. I recognize the voice, Robert from HR. It'll raise questions. Not if she's already gone. A resignation after a major contract closing looks like someone leaving on a high note, cashing out. Besides, my brother's been patient long enough. David deserves a chance at the big leagues. The documentation will show insubordination. I've been building the file for months. Every time she's corrected me in a meeting, every independent decision she's made without clearing it first, it paints a picture. I'd stood frozen in the hallway, my hand gripping the contract so tight the papers crinkled. David, her nephew who couldn't tell a P&L statement from a grocery list, who'd asked me to explain the difference between gross and net margin 3 times. This was who they wanted to replace me with? When? Robert had asked. As soon as she gets back from Buenos Aires. Let her close the deal first. We need that contract. Then we make the move. I'd slipped away silently, returned to my desk, and made a decision. I'd closed the Buenos Aires deal so spectacularly that removing me would be impossible. Naive. I'd been so naive. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. That was so fucked up. Are you okay? Then another. From a number I didn't recognize. This is Marcus. Check your email. Sent you something you should see. I opened my email. Marcus had forwarded me a company-wide memo dated for tomorrow. We're pleased to announce David Leclerc as our new senior strategy consultant, bringing fresh perspectives and innovative approaches to our client partnerships. David Leclerc. They'd already printed the announcements. This had been planned down to the letterhead. Another email popped up, this one making my heart race. Hector Salgado, the CEO whose contract I'd just secured in Buenos Aires. Subject line, concerned. Claire, I just received a call from Marion Leclerc informing me that you voluntarily resigned, effective immediately. This is highly concerning. Given our discussions about you personally overseeing our account implementation, please call me at your earliest convenience. If you've truly left Barton & Vale, I need to reconsider our partnership. Hector. Voluntarily resigned. The audacity of it made my jaw clench. Marion hadn't just wanted me gone. She'd wanted to control the narrative. Make it seem like I'd abandoned my responsibilities. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My makeup had survived the humiliation, even if my dignity hadn't. But behind my eyes, I saw something Marion had clearly missed. The same steel that had gotten a girl from Harbor Grace to the top floors of Manhattan's consulting world. Mom had been right. I'd been letting Marion decide my worth, letting her take credit for my value while believing that someday it would pay off. But there was no payoff coming. There never had been. I pulled out my laptop, balancing it on the steering wheel, and began typing. Not a resignation letter. Marion had apparently already written that fiction. No. This was something else entirely. A plan. A counterstrike. Because if Marion thought she could erase me with garbage bags and lies, she'd forgotten one crucial thing. Every major client in my portfolio had my personal cell number. Every contract I'd negotiated had my signature strategies embedded in its DNA. And Hector Salgado, he'd specifically asked for me by name. Marion had just declared war. But she'd failed to realize that in teaching me her own tactics all these years, she'd been training her replacement. The irony was delicious. Almost as delicious as what I was about to do next. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even slam my fist against the steering wheel like they do in movies. Instead, I sat in the growing darkness of the parking garage and smiled. It was the kind of smile that would have worried my mother. Calm, calculated, and completely devoid of warmth. My phone rang. Hector Salgado. Claire, thank God. His voice carried traces of his Argentine accent, stronger when he was agitated. What is this nonsense about you resigning? Hello, Hector. I didn't resign. I was terminated. About an hour ago, actually. My belongings were in garbage bags when I returned from closing your deal. Silence. Then, pardon? Garbage bags? Marion Leclerc seems to have made some strategic decisions in my absence. I'm sure David, her nephew, will take excellent care of your account. Her nephew? Hector's voice climbed an octave. The boy who asked me if Buenos Aires was in Brazil? I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. During our preliminary meetings, David had indeed made that spectacular geographical error. Hector had been too polite to correct him, but he'd shot me a look that spoke volumes. The very same, I confirmed. This is unacceptable. I signed with Barton & Vale because of you. Claire, your understanding of Latin American markets, your strategy for our expansion, that was what sold me. Not their brand name. I appreciate that, Hector. But, no buts. Where are you now? In my car, in their parking garage, actually. With what's left of my office in the back seat. Stay there, don't move, and whatever you do, don't sign anything. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, wondering what he was planning. Then I noticed another email had come through, this one from Barton & Vale's legal department. The subject line read, Confidential, Separation Agreement. I opened it. 16 pages of legal jargon that essentially boiled down to, take this insulting severance package, promise never to work with our clients again, and never speak of this to anyone. The non-compete clause alone was brutal. 2 years, covering not just direct competition, but any adjacent consulting services within a 500-mile radius. They wanted me to sign it within 24 hours or forfeit even the meager severance they were offering. I forwarded it to my personal email, Then to Lisa Volkov, a friend from law school who'd specialized in employment law. Her response was almost immediate. Do not sign. Call me. Instead of calling, I pulled up LinkedIn on my phone. David Leclerc had already updated his profile. Senior Strategy Consultant at Barton & Vale. The announcement must have been scheduled in advance. His bio claimed 3 years of experience in strategic client management when I knew for a fact he'd been selling commercial real estate until 6 months ago. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Whitford, this is Gabriel Martinez, Hector Salgado's chief legal officer. Mr. Salgado has asked me to extend an immediate consulting offer to you personally, independent of Barton & Vale. Are you available for a call? I sat up straighter. This was unexpected. Available now, I texted back. The call came within seconds. Ms. Whitford, I'll be direct. Gabriel's voice was all business. Mr. Salgado values relationships over institutions. He signed that contract believing you would oversee implementation. Marion Leclerc's deception changes things. We'd like to retain you as an independent consultant for the implementation phase. I appreciate the offer, but there's a non-compete clause, which hasn't been signed yet, correct? And even if it had been, it wouldn't prevent you from working directly for a client you brought to them. I've dealt with Barton & Vale's contracts before. They're aggressive, but not airtight. My mind raced. What exactly are you proposing? Simple. You establish your own consulting firm. Tonight, if possible. We'll retain you as our strategic advisor for the implementation phase. You'll interface with Barton & Vale on our behalf, ensuring they deliver what was promised. Think of it as quality control. You want me to oversee my replacement's work? I want you to protect our 8-figure investment. If that means sitting across from Marion Leclerc in every meeting, monitoring their performance, and reporting back to us, yes. Mr. Salgado is quite insistent. He's also suggested a consulting fee that's generous. He named a number. It was more than I'd made in 6 months at Barton & Vale. That's for 3 months' work, Gabriel added, with potential for extension. I looked at the garbage bags in my back seat. My framed MBA degree was visible through the plastic. The glass cracked. 4 years of letting Marion diminish me. And it had led to this moment. But this moment, sitting in a parking garage with my career in trash bags, was also an opportunity. I'll need to establish an LLC tonight, I said, my voice steady. Can you send the formal offer to my personal email? Already drafted. You'll have it within the hour. Oh, and Ms. Whitford. Mr. Salgado wanted me to tell you that he's already called 3 other CEOs in his network. They're very interested in learning why you're suddenly available. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for another moment. Marion had tried to bury me, but she'd forgotten that you can't bury someone who knows where all the bodies are hidden. I started my car, the engine purring to life. Tomorrow. Marion would walk into her office expecting to hear about my desperate scramble for survival. Instead, she'd find out that I'd be seeing her in the conference room on Monday as Hector Salgado's personal representative. The smile on my face wasn't warm, but for the first time in hours, it was genuine. My studio apartment in Brooklyn had never felt more like a war room. Legal documents spread across my kitchen table. Laptop open to 3 different browser windows. Coffee cup number 4 growing cold as I worked through the night. Outside, New York hummed its restless tune. But I was laser-focused on one thing: resurrection. By 3 a.m., Whitford Solutions, LLC was officially registered in Delaware. By 4 a.m., I had a business bank account, an EIN, and a professional website that looked like it had existed for years. Lisa Volkov had walked me through every legal tripwire, ensuring Marion couldn't claim I'd violated any agreements I'd never signed. Remember, Lisa had said during our midnight call, they terminated you without cause. You owe them nothing. No signed non-compete, no confidentiality beyond what's legally standard. You're free to work with anyone. But I wasn't interested in just anyone. I was interested in everyone. I pulled out my personal notebook, the one I'd always kept separate from company property. Over 4 years, I'd meticulously recorded every client preference, every personal detail that mattered. Jim Harrison at Meridian Industries had a daughter starting at Juilliard. Samantha Wu at Tech Forward always scheduled meetings around her marathon training. Roberto Silva at Clearwater Capital only trusted people who remembered his wife's name was Carmen, not Caroline, a mistake Marion made constantly. These weren't company secrets. These were relationships I'd built with my own emotional labor, my own weekend phone calls, my own careful attention to human details that Marion never bothered to notice. I started composing emails, each one personal, each one carefully crafted. Dear Jim, I wanted to let you know I'm transitioning to independent consulting. I remember you mentioned Sophia's first recital is next month. I hope the Juilliard experience is everything she dreamed. Samantha, congratulations on qualifying for Boston. I'm starting my own firm and would love to discuss how I might continue supporting Tech Forward's expansion independently. I didn't badmouth Barton and Vale. I didn't need to. The subtext was clear. I was available. I was independent. And I was the person they'd actually been working with all along. By sunrise, my inbox was already pinging with responses. Jim Harrison wanted to grab coffee Monday. Samantha Wu asked if I could review a proposal that Barton and Vale had just sent. She wasn't feeling confident about the new team's understanding of our needs. But the masterstroke came at 7 a.m. when I called Rajesh Patel, my former colleague who'd left Barton and Vale 2 years ago to start his own firm. Claire, I heard about yesterday. Marion finally showed her true colors. You could say that. Listen, Raj, I need a favor. You still have that shared workspace in the Chrysler building? The one with the view that makes clients weep? Of course. Can I rent it for Monday? I have a meeting at Barton and Vale, and I need a return address that makes a statement. Raj laughed. You're going back there? As what? Hector Salgado's independent advisor. I'll be overseeing the implementation of the contract I just closed. The silence on the other end was delicious. Then, Claire Whitford, you beautiful, vindictive genius. The space is yours. Hell, use it for the whole month. This is the best entertainment I've had in years. I spent the weekend preparing with military precision. I had business cards printed at a 24-hour shop, heavy cardstock, minimalist design, the Chrysler Building address embossed in gold. I bought a new suit from Nordstrom, sharp enough to cut glass, expensive enough to hurt my credit card, but worth every penny for the confidence it gave me. Sunday night, Hector called personally. Claire, I've had an interesting day. 3 board members at Barton and Vale have reached out, very concerned about maintaining our relationship. Marion LeClaire has personally assured them that the transition will be seamless. I'm sure she has. I told them I was concerned enough to hire an independent overseer, someone who understands our needs intimately. Their silence was telling. Hector, can I ask you something? Why are you really doing this? He paused. Because I built my company on loyalty. Claire, and because Marion LeClaire tried to lie to me. She said you abandoned the project, left them in the lurch, but I know you. In 2 years of working together, you've never missed a deadline, never dropped a ball. So either you had a personality transplant in Buenos Aires, or she's playing games. I don't like games with my 8-figure contracts. What if they try to block me from the building? Then they lose the contract. I've made that crystal clear. Gabriel has already sent them the formal notice. You're our designated representative. They can work with you. Or they can explain to their board why they lost their biggest Q3 win. After the call, I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marion was probably sleeping soundly, confident she'd won. David was probably updating his social media, basking in his unearned promotion. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop one more time and checked my Monday calendar. 9 a.m., Strategic Implementation Meeting, Barton and Vale Conference Room A, the same conference room where Marion had taken credit for my work so many times. This time would be different. This time, I wouldn't be sitting quietly in the corner, taking notes while she presented my ideas. This time, I'd be at the head of the table, representing the client whose contract kept their quarterly projections from tanking. The thought of Marion's face when I walked in almost made the garbage bags worth it. Almost. Monday morning arrived crisp and bright, the kind of New York day that makes the glass towers sparkle with promise. I stood before the Barton and Vale building at 8:45 a.m., my new Armani suit fitted like armor, my grandmother's pearl necklace adding just the right touch of established elegance. The security guard at the front desk, not Marcus, he only worked afternoons, looked up with professional boredom. Claire Whitford, Whitford Solutions, I'm here for the 9 a.m. implementation meeting. He frowned, checking his list. I don't see. I'm Mr. Salgado's representative. Check your updated visitor list. His eyes widened slightly as he refreshed his screen. Oh. Yes. Ms. Whitford. You're cleared for the executive floor. Would you like an escort? I know the way. The elevator ride felt like ascending to a boxing ring. Each floor that ticked by was a reminder. 4 days ago. This had been my daily commute. Now I was a visitor. A visitor with teeth. The executive floor hadn't changed. Same abstract art. Same subtle cologne scent from the partners who arrived before dawn. Same nervous energy from assistants trying to look busy. But the atmosphere shifted when I walked past. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Holy shit, Claire? Brad from accounting nearly dropped his tablet. What are you? Meeting, I said simply, continuing toward conference room A. I arrived 5 minutes early. Through the glass walls, I could see the room was already half full. David sat where I used to sit, shuffling through papers with barely concealed panic. 2 junior analysts flanked him, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marion's chair at the head of the table was still empty. I pushed open the door. Good morning, everyone. David's head snapped up so fast I worried he might have given himself whiplash. Claire, what? You can't. I'm here as Whitford Solutions, representing Mr. Salgado's interest in this implementation. I placed my business card in front of him, taking my time, letting the moment breathe. I believe you received the formal notice from our legal team on Friday? His mouth opened and closed like a beached fish. One of the junior analysts, Rebecca, if I remembered correctly, actually smiled before catching herself. This is highly irregular, David managed. Marion said, Said what, exactly? We all turned. Marion stood in the doorway, her power suit immaculate, her expression cycling through surprise, rage, and forced professional calm in the span of 3 seconds. Claire, what an unexpected pleasure. Marion! I pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the client's position. Mr. Salgado felt it necessary to have independent oversight for this implementation. Given the size of the investment, independent oversight, she said it like she was tasting something rotten. And you just happened to be available? Remarkably fortuitous timing, wouldn't you say? My sudden availability coinciding with his needs. I opened my leather portfolio, pulling out a tablet and stylus. Shall we begin? I believe David was going to walk us through the implementation timeline. David looked at Marion desperately. She gave him a tight nod, her jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitching. Right. Yes. The timeline. David fumbled with his laptop, trying to connect to the presentation system. It took him 3 tries. When the slides finally appeared, my heart almost broke for him. Almost. He was using my deck, my formatting, my charts, even my proprietary framework for stakeholder mapping. But he'd clearly made changes, amateur ones. Fonts didn't match. Data points were misaligned. And on slide 7, he'd actually reversed the revenue projections. Stop, I said quietly. David froze mid-sentence. The Q4 projections on slide 7. You show revenues decreasing during the holiday season for a retail-facing client. Could you explain your reasoning? That's... He clicked back to the slide, staring at it like he'd never seen it before. That must be a typo. A typo. I made a note on my tablet, aware that everyone could see me writing. And slide 12. The implementation phases are out of sequence. You have user testing scheduled before development is complete. Marian intervened. These are minor adjustments we can. Minor? I pulled out my phone, pretending to text. I should let Mr. Salgado know that 8-figure implementation errors are considered minor here. He'll find that interesting. There's no need for that, Marian said quickly. David is still getting up to speed. Getting up to speed? I let the words hang. How long has David been preparing for this role? I assume there was a thorough transition period before my departure? Silence. Rebecca actually coughed to cover what sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Perhaps, I continued, we should schedule a follow-up meeting once David has had time to familiarize himself with the material. I can provide Mr. Salgado with my assessment of today's presentation in the meantime. That won't be necessary, Marian said. We can address these issues now. Excellent, then let's go through it, slide by slide. David, could you explain the strategic rationale behind each phase? And please, be specific. Mr. Salgado particularly values detailed thinking. What followed was 45 minutes of professional torture. David stumbled through explanations of work he didn't understand, strategies he couldn't defend, and metrics he couldn't define. Marian tried to intervene repeatedly, but each time I redirected to David with surgical precision. This is David's account now, isn't it? I'm sure he can answer. By the meeting's end, David looked like he'd run a marathon in his suit. Marian's knuckles were white from gripping her pen, and everyone else in the room had witnessed exactly what happened when nepotism met reality. Thank you for your time, I said, standing and gathering my things. I'll need daily progress reports, of course. And Marian, Mr. Salgado has requested that I attend all meetings related to his account. I trust that won't be a problem. She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Of course not. We value our client relationships above all else. How refreshing to hear. I'll see myself out. As I walked past the cubicles toward the elevator, I heard something beautiful. Applause? Quiet? Subtle? But unmistakable. A few brave souls were actually slow clapping from behind their monitors. Sarah caught up with me at the elevator. That was fucking magnificent, she whispered. That was just Monday, I replied as the doors opened. Wait until you see what I do on Tuesday. Tuesday arrived with an email from Barton & Vale's legal department, sent at 11:47 p.m. the night before. They'd been working late, trying to find an angle. The subject line was professionally threatening. Potential conflict of interest. Immediate action required. I read it over my morning coffee, almost admiring their creativity. They were claiming that my work with Salgado violated the non-compete clause of my employment agreement, the one I'd never signed because they'd terminated me without proper documentation. They demanded I cease all activities immediately or face legal action. Lisa Volkov called me before I'd finished my second cup. They're desperate, she said without preamble. This is what we call a scare letter. All bark, no legal bite. Forward it to me. I'll handle it. By noon, Lisa had fired back with a response that was a masterpiece of legal aggression. She pointed out that Barton & Vale had failed to provide proper termination documentation, had destroyed personal property, and had potentially committed fraud by misrepresenting my departure to clients. She suggested that any further harassment would result in a countersuit for defamation, wrongful termination, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She also CC'd Gabriel Martinez at Salgado Enterprises. Within an hour, my phone rang. Marian. Claire, perhaps we should discuss this situation more professionally. I agree. Shall I add this call to my documentation of Barton & Vale's continued harassment? A pause. That's not necessary. I'm calling to propose a solution. I'm listening. You complete the Salgado implementation. Quietly. No more grandstanding in meetings. In return, we'll provide a proper severance package and a positive reference. Marian, you seem confused. I don't need your reference. I have my own company now. And as for severance, that ship sailed when you put my belongings in garbage bags. Be reasonable, Claire. You know how this industry works. We can make things difficult for you. Like you did yesterday, because David's performance really strengthened your position. Silence. Then, what do you want? Nothing from you. I have what I want, the freedom to work with clients who value competence over nepotism. But thank you for the offer. I hung up before she could respond. Wednesday brought a new development. Robert from HR reached out through LinkedIn with a message marked confidential. He wanted to meet off the record. I agreed, choosing a coffee shop in Murray Hill where Barton and Vale employees never ventured. Robert looked exhausted, stress etched in lines around his eyes. This is off the record, he began. Of course. The board is asking questions, hard ones, about your termination, about David's qualifications, about Marian's judgment. He stirred his coffee nervously. 3 other senior consultants have submitted resignations this week. They all cited cultural concerns. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was singing. That's unfortunate. Claire, I need those emails. What emails? The ones where Marian discussed replacing you with David. I know you have them. You document everything. I might have overheard some conversations. But emails? He leaned forward. Security footage shows you at your desk the night those conversations happened. Your computer logs show you forwarded several emails to your personal account, all within policy for work-related materials. I smiled. Robert, are you asking me to provide evidence against your own supervisor? I'm asking you to help me prevent a lawsuit that could destroy the firm. The board is considering action, but they need cause. Marian's been careful, but not careful enough. And what's in it for me? Full reinstatement with back pay, if you want it, or a settlement that would make your eyes water, plus Marian's resignation. Marian's head on a platter, that's quite an offer. It's not personal, it's business. She's become a liability. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my saved emails, and showed him one, just the header, not the content. Marian to Robert, subject line. Whitford replacement timeline. His face went pale. You have the whole chain? I have everything, Robert, every email where she discussed replacing me with her nephew. Every document showing she planned this for months. Every piece of evidence that shows this was nepotism, not restructuring. What do you want? I want you to sweat for another week while I think about it. I want Marian to walk into that building every day wondering when the axe will fall. I want David to realize he's in so far over his head that he's drowning. That's cruel. No, Robert. Cruel was destroying my personal property and humiliating me in front of my colleagues. This is justice, served at exactly the right temperature. I stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Robert, the 3 consultants who resigned, you might want to check who they've been having coffee with lately. Whitford Solutions is always looking for talent. Thursday was quiet, too quiet. I knew Marian was planning something. She wasn't the type to go down without a fight. The answer came through Hector's assistant. Marian had scheduled an emergency meeting with Salgado's board for Friday, flying to Buenos Aires to address concerns about the implementation. She was trying to cut me out by going over my head. Hector called me immediately. She's trying to convince my board that you're a vindictive former employee sabotaging the relationship. Are you concerned? He laughed. Claire, my board includes 2 people you've worked with before. They specifically asked if you were available for other projects. Marian is about to walk into a room full of your fans. Still, she might have something planned. Oh, I'm counting on it. I've asked Gabriel to attend. He loves a good show, especially when someone tries to manipulate contracts he's written. Friday morning, I was in the Chrysler Building office when my phone exploded with texts. Sarah, Rebecca, Brad, even Marcus, all sending variations of the same message. Marian had been escorted from the Buenos Aires meeting within 15 minutes. Apparently, she'd tried to claim I'd violated confidentiality agreements, only to have Gabriel produce documentation showing no such agreements existed. But the real beauty came from Hector himself. She actually tried to suggest David should fly down to take over personally. My board asked him to explain our expansion strategy. He couldn't even pronounce our CFO's name correctly. By 3 p.m. New York time, I received an email from Barton & Vale's senior partner. Marion Leclerc was taking an indefinite leave of absence to pursue other opportunities. David would be transitioning to a role better suited to his developing skills. They wanted to meet Monday to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. I looked out at the Manhattan skyline from my borrowed office, the city spreading out like a promise of infinite possibilities. Marion had tried to bury me in garbage bags. Instead, she'd freed me from a cage I hadn't even realized I was in. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Saw your LinkedIn update about the new company. Proud of you for knowing your worth, sweetheart. I smiled, thinking about that 12-year-old girl crying about living in a rental. She'd be pretty impressed with how this week had turned out. One more meeting to go. One more chance to twist the knife. And then, finally, I could focus on building something that was entirely mine. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls and coffee meetings. My LinkedIn inbox looked like Times Square on New Year's Eve, flashing with opportunities, connections, and more than a few competitors trying to poach Barton & Vale's destabilized talent pool. But the most interesting message came from James Rothschild, Barton & Vale's senior managing partner. Not an email, not a formal letter. A handwritten note delivered to my apartment by courier. Ms. Whitford, I believe we have mutual interests to discuss. Monday, 2 p.m., my office. Please come alone. J.R. Sarah texted me Sunday night. Everyone knows something big is happening tomorrow. Marion's office has been cleared out. David's been moved to a cubicle in the annex, where they put people they're hoping will quit. Monday at 1:45 p.m., I stood outside the building once more. This time, security was expecting me. This time, the elevator was held open. This time, I was escorted directly to the 40th floor, the inner sanctum where equity partners ruled their glass and steel kingdom. James Rothschild's office was everything Marion's had pretended to be, genuinely powerful, understated. With a view that made you understand why people sacrifice their lives for a seat at this table. He stood when I entered, a courtesy Marion had never extended. Claire, thank you for coming. Mr. Rothschild. James, please. We're past formalities, I think. He gestured to a sitting area away from his desk, the power move of making this seem casual. Can I offer you anything? Water? Coffee? Marion's old job. I almost choked on nothing. That's quite an opening offer. I don't believe in wasting time. Here's the situation. We lost 3 major clients this morning. Not because of David's incompetence, though that didn't help. Because they heard you were independent now. They want to work with you, not us. I'm flattered. You're victorious. There's a difference. He leaned back, studying me. Marion cost us more than money. She cost us reputation. The story's already spreading. How we treat talent, how we reward nepotism over merit. We need to control the narrative. And you think hiring me back would do that? No. I think giving you Marion's position would be insufficient. You've proven you're worth more than that. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the coffee table. Senior partner, strategic implementation, new division, your design, your team, equity stake, and something else. I opened the folder, scanned the offer. The number was staggering, but it was the organizational chart that made me pause. This position reports directly to you. Bypassing the entire middle management structure that failed us, you'd have autonomy, resources, and my direct support. And Marion's allies? What allies? She's been burning bridges for years. We just didn't see it because she kept delivering your results as her own. His expression hardened. The forensic audit of her client files has been illuminating. Your fingerprints are on every major win, she claimed. You did an audit? Robert in HR was very thorough in his documentation. Apparently, He's been building a contingency file for 2 years, waiting for Marion to overplay her hand. I thought about all those times Robert had seemed uncomfortable in meetings, all those careful notes he'd taken. He knew. He suspected. But you were succeeding despite her, so he waited. When she moved against you, he moved against her. Corporate politics at its finest. And David? Will be returning to commercial real estate by end of business today. His resignation letter is being typed as we speak. I stood, walked to the window. 40 floors below. Manhattan pulsed with ambition and appetite. 3 months ago. I would have sold my soul for this view, this office, this vindication. I need to think about it. James looked genuinely surprised. Most people would jump at this. Most people didn't just spend a week discovering they don't need you. I turned to face him. I have my own firm now. Clients who chose me, not your brand. Freedom to build something without Marion's shadow or anyone else's. But think of the resources. I'm also thinking about spending another decade in these towers, playing these games, watching my back for the next Marion. I picked up my purse. You know what the ironic part is? If Marion had just treated me with basic respect, I'd still be here, making you millions while she took the credit. Her cruelty freed me. So that's a no. That's a, I'll think about it. But James, if you really want to control the narrative, you might start by asking why someone would need to think about an offer this generous. What does that say about your culture? He stood, extended his hand. You've learned well. Perhaps too well for our own good. I had an excellent teacher. She showed me exactly what not to become. As I walked through the lobby one more time, Marcus was at his station. He gave me a subtle thumbs up. I nodded back, then pushed through the revolving doors into the afternoon sun. My phone was already ringing. Hector. With news that 3 more companies in his network wanted proposals from Whitford Solutions. Sarah, saying half the strategy team was updating their resumes. Lisa Volkov, confirming that Barton & Vale's legal department had officially dropped all threats. But it was the last call that made me stop in the middle of the sidewalk. Marion LeClaire. Hello, Marion. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I underestimated you. No, you undervalued me. There's a difference. I suppose you're feeling quite satisfied. Actually, I'm feeling free. For the first time in 4 years, I'm not carrying someone else's weight on my shoulders. Silence. Then, they offered you my job, didn't they? They offered me much more than that. And nothing. This isn't about you anymore, Marion. It stopped being about you the moment I realized I didn't need your approval, your recognition, or your platform. I built my own. Claire. I hung up. There was nothing left to say. She'd written the beginning of this story when she'd stuffed my life into garbage bags. But the ending? That was all mine to write. Tuesday morning, I arrived at Barton & Vale for what I knew would be the last time. Not slinking out with garbage bags, not negotiating for my career, but walking in as the architect of Marion's complete professional destruction. The executive conference room was packed. James Rothschild sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 other senior partners. Marion was there, stripped of her power suit armor, wearing a simple black dress that made her look older, diminished. Her hands were folded too tightly, knuckles white against the mahogany table. Thank you all for coming, James began. We're here to formally announce the restructuring of our Strategic Implementation Division. I took my seat directly across from Marion. Our eyes met for just a moment, hers filled with a mixture of defeat and desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this wasn't the end. Effective immediately, James continued. Marion LeClaire's responsibilities will be redistributed. The client relationship management will transfer to our new division, headed by Claire Whitford. Marion's head snapped up. But she hasn't accepted. I have, I interrupted smoothly. With conditions. James nodded for me to continue. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. I'll return to Barton & Vale as Senior Partner of Strategic Implementation, but my division will operate independently. I choose my team, my clients, and my methods. No oversight from middle management. Direct reporting to the board only. That's unprecedented, one of the other partners protested. So was putting someone's career in garbage bags, I replied. Consider this the cost of that decision. I turned to Marion. Additionally, all client accounts that I developed or managed during my previous tenure will transfer to my division. That's approximately 60% of your current portfolio. Marion. She looked like I'd slapped her. You can't. Actually, I can. The board has already approved it. I slid another paper across the table. Here's the list. You'll note it includes every major account you've claimed credit for over the past 4 years. Marion grabbed the paper, scanning it with growing horror. Her already pale face went translucent. Without those accounts, she was essentially managing nothing. A senior director title with no portfolio, no team, no purpose. Corporate purgatory. This is vindictive, she whispered. No, Marion. Vindictive would have been suing you for defamation, theft of intellectual property, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I stood, gathering my papers. This is just business, the same kind you taught me. I could have promoted you, Marion said desperately. Eventually, I would have. No, you wouldn't have. You were grooming David to replace me from the day he arrived. Every strategy I created, every relationship I built, you were planning to hand to your nephew like a gift wrapped in my hard work. I moved toward the door, then stopped. You know what the funny thing is, Marion? If you'd just fired me professionally, 2 weeks' notice, a decent severance, a respectful transition, I would have disappeared quietly, found another job, moved on. But you had to humiliate me. You had to break me. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. She chose the wrong person to break. So you're taking everything from me? Marion's voice cracked. No. I'm taking back what was already mine. There's a difference. I opened the door. Paused. Oh. And Marion? Your nephew David left you a note. Something about how commercial real estate suddenly seemed more appealing than strategic consulting. Funny how quickly family loyalty evaporates when the power's gone. The last thing I saw was Marion slumped in her chair, staring at the list of accounts she'd lost, surrounded by people who'd already started talking about her in the past tense. I walked through the strategy department one final time, but now as senior partner. The cubicles erupted in spontaneous applause. Sarah was crying and laughing simultaneously. Brad actually whooped. Even the junior analysts who'd been too scared to speak before were clapping. I stopped at what used to be my cubicle, the one where I'd spent countless late nights perfecting presentations Marion would claim as her own. Someone had put a small potted succulent on the desk. The same one from my garbage bag. Replanted. Thriving. A note was attached. From all of us who knew the truth, welcome back. Do better than she did. I picked up the plant, cradling it like that first day in the lobby, but this time with triumph instead of humiliation. Through the glass walls, I could see Marion's former office, my new office. 40 floors up, corner view. The kingdom I'd earned not through nepotism or politics, but through the brilliant execution of justice. Mom had been right all those years ago in Harbor Grace. Never let anyone else decide your worth. Marion had tried to throw me away like garbage. Instead, she taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's becoming everything they pretended to be, and then taking everything they thought was theirs. I set the succulent on my new desk, right where everyone could see it. A reminder that sometimes the things people try to throw away are exactly what come back to bury them. Claire Whitford, senior partner. It had a nice ring to it, especially when I knew Marion could hear it from her empty office down the hall, echoing like a bell that would never stop ringing. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of sweet corporate revenge, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced a similar situation at work? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments.